Official, welcome to our July meetup. Time flies, hey? I was like, okay, that means we're halfway to the year, but I'm like, no, it's end July. Sure, we're nearly in the end of the year. Today is the power of relative sizing, mastering story points, and agile estimation. Now, I just read this title myself again as we jumped in here, and like, what a confusing title, actually, Malene. What are you trying to say? It's relative sizing, story points, agile estimation. What are we actually going to talk about? We are going to talk about all of it. And this is actually one of the biggest anti-pattern we see when we talk sizing, estimation. It is that people confuse all of these things and put it all under one big umbrella. So we're here today to try go into what is it actually, and then I will, in the end of today, also give you how I do it and how it's worked very well for me and why I love relative sizing and how it can become practical. Please feel free along the way. I am bad to have an eye on the chat, but I know Bevan is good at that. So if you have comments, questions, just put them in the chat. I know Bevan, if there's a question that should be out loudly, please do that for me. Or else also unmute yourself and ask questions along the way. I want this to be interactive and not just me talking at you. So if there's something you don't understand or something you want me to get more in, feel free to unmute yourself and or put it in the chat. When we talk about estimation, so I was trying, let me get this one away. Not now, go away. I was thinking about, okay, let's first actually look about estimation techniques because before we just go in and talk about it. And the first thing when we talk estimation, we cannot run around and not talk about time estimation, right? That's where we're all coming from. And I think that's the big problem. We all think we want to change, but when the true hit the fan is we back to how long will it take? Time estimation has been around for years because that's the easiest way, right? That's the question we know. Please tell me how long will this take? Why does it become so difficult when we talk about agile and into teams? Honestly, because no matter how long we take to discuss it, we are all different. So when I say it takes me 2 hours, Bevan says it take him 5 hours. We probably both right. So what do? We fight about it. And then we say, let's take the average. What's the problem with average? It's always wrong. Because now I'm not right, Bevan is not right. Now it's wrong for all of us. That's the simplicity of it. But I actually also want to go a little bit deeper in it. With time estimation, firstly, I think we all can agree now, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but the word estimation, right? It is a guess. Simply a guess. We have no idea. Nobody knows how long something will take until it's done. That's a fact. So what happens with these time estimation? Now, I do want you to participate a little bit. Let's look into it. I want to find an icon quickly. Where is the icons? Have all of you seen an apple before? Just those of you that doesn't have videos, just give me a thumbs up. Hey, have you seen an apple before? Huh? In the chat. Okay, I see all thumbs up. Hey, we all seen an apple before. Have you tasted an apple? Okay, let's. So you all say you've seen an apple before. We agree on that. That also means you must be able to tell me how much does the apple weigh. You've seen it before. You in technical words, right? You've done it before. How much does the apple weigh? Any guess in the chat? I see guess. 700, 600 grams, 300. Whoa. So what do we do now? This is typical our team situation, right? So we have in the chat, we have 600 grams, we have 100 to 250 grams, we have 300. So what do we agree on? Oh, the average might be like 300 grams. Does that mean if I go now to my fridge and pick up an apple, yes, I have my apples in the fridge, does it weigh exactly 300 grams? Do you want to bet $1 million on it with me? I see no, right? None of us, even though you've seen an apple, none of you can tell me what it weighs. We can maybe guess, right? It might be between this, but you cannot give me exact number. This is what we try when we sit with the team and ask, how long will it take? Now, with the apple, it might feel to you, well, I can't do it. How can you then ask your team to do it? with a complex task when you can't even size the weight of a simple apple? What is the problem with time estimation? It is that it's an absolute number. It is not flexible. If you take 2 hours, I put in my Gantt chart, right? It takes 2 hours. It is not flexible. What can we do instead? Have you all seen a pineapple before? Yes? No? I see nodding. We all seen a pineapple before. Can you tell me what the pineapple weigh? Same issue, right? In the chat, can you tell me what a pineapple weigh? Yeah, now some people says my pineapple weigh less than the suggestion of the apple. That's interesting. On average, based on what we know about an apple and a pineapple, you can't, again, it's the same example, right? A weight is an absolute number. You can't give me that, even though you've seen the pineapple before. But what you can give me is, based on your experience, is a pineapple bigger or smaller than the apple? Is the pineapple smaller than that? Well, don't look at my pictures, right? Think about it in real life. If you go to the grocery store, is the pineapple bigger or smaller than the apple? Bigger. 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 Do we all agree on that? That is not directly a number, but that is the magic we need to talk about today. When we talk about estimation, we have to go away of absolute numbers because they're always wrong. Even an average, so absolute number, even an average number. Maggie, I can see in the chat you say, but how much bigger? We'll get back to this. Right now, I just want to try to show you the challenge of time estimation. It does not work. And I think, since you're also here today, you know that. Why do we keep coming back to this? Because that's how our brain works. Change, I know we talk a lot about change. We call ourselves, as Agile coach, sometimes change agent, but change are bloody difficult. And to our whole life, we have used time to estimate on how long something will do. It sits in our brain. So when we're busy in a workplace, it's the most natural thing to ask. We know project managers used to doing their Gantt chart based on time. It is what we're used to. So when we talk about sizing, estimation in Agile, it should not, and that's 2 words actually. Time estimation. So another word is estimation is not sizing. I see a lot of people use these words into trying, we estimate. No, estimate is based on an absolute number. We don't do that. What we do in Agile is sizing. And sizing is what you just did. Relative to each other, which one is bigger or not. There was then a comment in the chat, but how much bigger? That we'll come back to. This is the fundamental of why most of us is actually struggling with estimations. Firstly, I would invite you, I do it sometimes myself, we're stuck in the estimation language, right? But we don't estimate in Agile, we size. That already should help your brain think differently, saying, no, it's not about time. Time, when should you use time estimation? When it's simple, repeatable work with low uncertainty. I'm going to ask you, how much do you have of that in your work environment? Pretty sure not much. Or if it is a simple task you can do for yourself, yes, probably, maybe. But the thing is, most of the environment we want to create, right, is collaborative, working together. The more we work together, the more we problem solve, the more uncertainty there is. And the time is the enemy. So let's just park it. Time is not the right functionality to use in an Agile environment. Then you might ask, what should I then be using? Out in the world, and if you chat GPT it or Google it or whatever we call it today, there is so much stuff out there. There is so much misunderstanding. There is so much anti-patterns and overlay each other. So I want to try to clarify something. One of the easiest way of sizing is t-shirt sizing. 3 buckets, small, medium, large. It's the symbols. But yes, then we have the problem. How long will it take? We still have that question, right? So the one anti-pattern I also see is when people say, oh, but when we size, we can't predict the future. You can. Maybe not with small, medium, large. That's also why this is not my preferable. I only use this way of sizing when it's high level, a quick little understanding, just put it into some buckets. So often on a company executive level, when we have to look at projects, I would maybe use it there. Put it into buckets so we quickly can understand how big is this. So this is, for me, only a technique that should be used to quickly get an understanding of the work, not to predict. I also hear a lot of people saying, well, could we not start there? You can, but again, why not just do it right from the start? Let's come back to that. Then I've seen over the years, many people love poker planning. And I used to, back in the days, I saw a lot of people have the cards itself, right? When we were in person still. I think sometimes people also bring it back. Now, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding with poker planning, because people think story points, poker planning, and relative estimation is the same thing. It is not. So over the time, I've seen a lot of companies implement poker planning. And now I have made my note here, and I've tried to give you like best for, and I made my statement here. Best for, nothing. What is it a lot of you probably have? You've seen a nice article, been on a training where they have these nice poker cards, right? We often forget to change the behavior in poker planning. What does that mean? That means it become a fun gimmick. It's fun to sit with a card, right? It become practical. It's beautiful. We've got a branded card box and sit there with all your card. Or I've even seen there's even apps on your phone, right? But what I see Agile coaches, Scrum Master still doing is asking, how long will this take? How big is it? Now we all sit, and I've done that for many years myself ago, saying, how big is this? And everybody had to, back then we used our phone. I don't know if you said that, don't see what I'm going to vote because you shouldn't take mine, right? And the conversation become more about that than it become, what are we going to do? So now they sit there secretly and say like, yeah, I'm giving an 8. Who can I pick on today? So Kota is giving a 3. What does the product Scrum Master do? Why do you say that? Malene, why do you say an 8? Use half an hour to explain why you're saying an 8. I'm like, you asked me how big it is. I'm telling you, for me, it's an 8. So Kota, you say it's 5. What happens here? We haven't changed the behavior of sizing. What does that mean? Yes, we put in a poker planning nice cards, but it's actually the same question we're asking compared to how long will it take? So what does team then use time on? Well, if I say it's an 8, so could I say it's a 3? It's the same thing that I will say it's an 8 hour, so could I say it's a 3 hour? We're both right. So what are we going to do? We either have to convince each other, now we waste half an hour. I've been in those conversations myself. I assume most of you also have, where we negotiate with each other. Oh, but I said it was an 8. Okay, now convince me why it should be a 5. It's a waste. It's again focused on a time. And that's where many people, many teams misunderstand. When you just adopt the poker planning view, you haven't changed the behavior. And often I hear people saying, oh, but an 8 will take 16 hours. Why are you then doing poker planning? You're basically doing time estimation. It's the same thing. Just because we put a flashy little cards in on top of it, it doesn't change behavior. Now, when we talk about user stories, did I put that in? No, I didn't put that in. I put that down here. User story. It's funny, right? Let's get the correct word. We have poker planning, we have user stories, and we have relative estimation. Planning poker is the technique of using cards to size. Story points are the Fibonacci sequence that we use. And yes, they are both used in poker planning and relative sizing. It's the same thing. Why do we use story points? That's part of the relative. It's not this is doubled as big. It's a relative size. So something like maybe we need to create the scooter, right? But next scooter has scooter with a cover on top. But they're both scooters. They can both be into that one because it's not a completed car. So that's the thinking about story points. It's not an absolute number. It is flexible. So we don't have to exactly the same to be in the same number. That's the power of story points. Now, where I like and where I have had most success is with what we call relative estimation. That focus much more on, instead of asking how big it asks the question, is it bigger or smaller than the other one? So we compare to each other. I'll come back to beyond estimation. Let's first look into relative estimation. Here it's not so much, and damn it, now I forgot my my post-it. I'll try to make another practical example. Here's not how big is it, because how big is an individual conversation. Is it bigger or smaller, like the conversation we have here? But for us to be able to do that, if you're new and you have to size, we have to have a baseline, right? Baseline is up to the team. So what I personally always say to a team, when we have to first create our baseline, that is the one, like our apple that we had up here, that we're going to measure against, I personally train saying, find something that is a tree, not a three, growing three. I know I have a strong accent. The number three. Now, what does that mean? It depends. All projects are different. So what you need to do here is saying, okay, what is it that, what was I say? What is a product backlog item from our backlog that we all know what we need to do? We all have an understanding, as we find good enough. So personally, why do I like to go with a three? Because then you can both go up and down. But we want something people have a good understanding about. And this is where another anti-pattern comes, because a lot of people out there call it poker planning, relative estimation, and they talk about both and it gets blurred. And when you do poker planning, a lot of explanation of that says, find your zero and then go from there. I'm like, how can you find your zero? How do, like, a product backlog is always emergent. How can you know from the start that you have the smallest item? You can't. So instead of starting with a zero, start with a three. That's your lowest. And then you have the opportunity to go down or go up. But also start with an eight. It actually doesn't matter. We just need to find a baseline to agree. Now, I wanted to actually use practical example. Let me maybe try to do it online. I haven't done that before. So this is going to be visually our product backlog item. In this, what's it called? This product backlog item, we in IT right now. And if you were a developer, you would know. So what is it actually trying to size? It is the uncertainty. So here, many people also like, no, it's complexity, it's blah, blah, complexity, uncertainty is the same thing. It's the effort, it's all of these things. What I like to do is say, keep it simple. Keep it that simple. Just right now, the more work you have to do, the more uncertainty there is. Because the more work we need to do, logically, right, there can be more things go wrong. Try to think about as simple as that. So if you do software development, now this is what my product backlog item here says. We need to develop a page with an input field and a button. Can we all relate to that? This is a button. Now this is our very first product backlog item. What size is that? See, now instead of saying, it will take 3 hours for me, it will take 5 hours for me, can we just agree it's a three? Yes, we can. Okay, now we all have our same baseline. For Bevan, it might take 5 hours. I'm better than Bevan, so it'll take me 2. It's about getting that whole thing. Well, now we have a common baseline. So let's say this one is the three. Now our next product backlog item. Need to see if I can copy paste this. Our next product backlog item, let me delete it, has, this is really developing live here, hey? Next part backlog item has one input field and 2 buttons. Is it bigger or smaller than the 3?
Slightly bigger.
Slightly bigger. It's much bigger, it's much bigger. And this is the perfect. So back to that question, like, but how much bigger? Well, right now, we're still busy with our baselines. We don't have anything much like anything else. So when we go up here to our story point, bigger than 3 is a 5. Do we have any 5 we already have sized? No, so we can't compare that. So could we get this a 5? Well, this is just number we're giving. It doesn't mean anything right now. Right now, we're just giving number compared to each other. It's more work, so it's bigger. And so you said just a little bit bigger, right? It's meaning we wouldn't go all the way up to 8. This is a quick little conversation. Now, what if we have another one, another backlog item that has, instead of 2 buttons, it has 2 input fields and 1 button. We start out with our baseline, number 3. Is it bigger or smaller than number 3? Uncertainty? We'll say it's bigger or smaller than number 3.
Bigger.
Bigger. Okay, now we know we're bigger. We have a 5. Is it bigger and smaller than our 5? I can see some hesitating, right? Like, oh, I don't know, is it bigger or smaller? It always depends. Saying I can see that in chat. You spot and always depends. The problem is, no, the good thing about this with the relative sizing, our numbers are not absolute numbers. They are variable. We are still not talking about time here. We are just comparing them to each other, which meaning which one does it come closest to? Now back to what we often end out in our meetings, right, is one says 3, the other one says 5. Instead of now arguing, about what is it? Let's use half an hour and understand each other. What I normally do is, if there's no big jump between what people say, always oversize. Because undersizing will just bite your ass. The reality is, all of this is going to take the time it takes, no matter what number you put on it. We are just putting them in congestion with each other. So in this example, as some said there, it's bigger. I would give it a 5. We could also, well, it wasn't bigger than our 5, but it was bigger than our 3. If everybody said, no, it should go into the same bucket as a 3, then let's give it a 3. So I see the comment, and I'm wondering if the real value here, not the final number, but the conversation about uncertainty, assumption, and what we still do not understand about our work. Spot on, Elvis, that's part of it. Part of it is that. But the thing about this powerfulness of relative estimation is, if there is something we don't know, so let's say in this project, we also need to do what can I come up with? An admin page, and we have to do all of these things. Nobody have understood that yet, hey? How big is that? Is it bigger than our 3? Is it bigger than our 5? Nobody have understood what we have to do, right? We got an idea. We have to create an admin page that has all the information for the company. So it's probably like 100 input fields. But we don't know exactly everything details. What is the magic here? You size uncertainty. So if you have something like this that we don't understand yet, you just give it a higher number. So this could be a 40. Again, because we compared with each other, it doesn't say how long. It says this is so much uncertainty, so we will give it a 40. We never sized a 40 anymore, so this is a wild guess. Now we have a baseline for a 40 for next time. But the magic become here, and the jump by Fibonacci, the story point is so powerful, is when we get to it, there can be really many 1, 2, 3, 5 in a 40. And it's spreading out of the risk there. I want you to track back. We still have not talked about how long it will take. We have just talked about the size. How big is it compared to each other? Now, if we understand that, we also understand we can't go to another team, right? And saying, well, mine is mine. I was going to say mine is bigger than yours. We can't do that because each team has their own baseline. And it's the power of that. We have to understand the team's baseline. Now, how would you bring on a new team member then? Show them what is our numbers. So if they one day say 40, we can pull this up. This was our 40 last time. Is it that? And the more you compare them with each other, the better the number gets in relationship to each other. Okay, it's not time. It's just numbers. This is relative estimation. But by itself, it means nothing. It's just a bunch of number. And that's where also when people say, could we not do t-shirt sizing? Yes, you could, but I'm a data person. I like to be able to do the math. You can't do that easily with t-shirt sizing, and they're also limiting. Now, just to prove a point, I have used this technique on multiple projects, and especially one stood out where I was the lead product owner quite many years ago now. The project was a typical waterfall project of rewriting and manufacturing and warehouse system. Typical waterfall. It was a 2-year project. I ran it more agile because that's who I am. The project ended on time, in budget, and more than they asked for. How often do you hear about that? With using this technique. Now, relative estimation cannot stand by itself. We need to build onto it. Now, the shame word that many companies misunderstand is called velocity. Sometimes I'm a bit scared of talking about velocity because there's so many anti-patterns along the way about velocity. Velocity is a way of being able to forecasting delivery. Nothing else. It should not be used for anything else than forecasting delivery. What does that mean? Well, if we have sized a backlog, we still have no idea. We have no idea. So I just saw, Elvis, there will be a recording out so you can get the last part of this also. We'll share that with you. This doesn't say anything about how to deliver. It's just numbers. So what we need to do is, as any good Scrum team, we need to run experiments. What I like to say to companies, give me 2 months, 4 or 5 sprints. Then we have data we can use to predict. Everybody wants an upfront timeline. Yeah, I can make you that. One big fat lie. That's always it is. We cannot make a timeline in the start when we know the least. Let's rather make an experiment. So what I say is after 2 months, I will give you an accurate timeline. So what happens is, what I do is saying, if we run sprint, you need data. So sprint 1, when your team go into a sprint planning, you have no idea what they can do. They're new. They need to start getting work together. What I like to say is, first sprint, use your gut feeling. Look at your backlog. Take a portion in what you think you can do. It's a test. It's an experiment. We often forget that. Scrum is about creating an experiment. When we're done with our sprint, we can see the product backlog item we did and sum up the user stories. So there we might have done 15 story points. Okay, now we at least have the first data point. But I'm pretty sure any of you that have done a project like this before, you also know first sprint is often just a tryout. A lot needs to happen and not least said. So we do another one, sprint 2. The team did 21 story points. I'm just making these numbers up right now, hey? Just to be clarifying, how do we get these story points? Well, when we're done with the sprint, we see what we've done, sum up the story points. That's what you've done that sprint. Sprint 3 comes out to 19 story points. Sprint 4, there they did 23. That's not just my personal favorite, I like 5 sprints. Then I feel we have sufficient with data. Here they might have done 22 story points. Now a tool like Jira, DevOps, they do these calculations automatically, right? This is just an idea. No sprint is ever the same. We're humans. But now we can start seeing the patterns. And the more we go, the more mature we get, the more data we get, the more pattern we get. But already now we might start to pick up on a pattern. Now, tools like Jira and stuff are not always, they often just take these numbers, divide by 5, and then think this is your average. But what actually happened here that they might not have been aware of is there was one public holiday. Of course, that impacted what we could get done. Now, if I had to also be able to do something easy, what's called the calculation here, I would actually see average velocity is 20. Now, people think your average velocity is what you need to do every sprint. That is not correct. Average velocity is a forecast on how much on average can we do. And remember, average is always wrong. As you can see up here, there's none of these sprints that have given you 20 story points. They're all different. Some is minus, some is stuff. The benefit of velocity is it takes in team size, sprint length, availability, productivity, and learning over time. Plus this whole holiday and all of that, the more data we get is actually incorporated in it. So we don't always need to think about that. What we then do when we talk in a sprint planning, you want average velocity, and when you do your sprint planning, you want capacity. So that's just a guidance. Is everybody there the whole sprint? We should definitely be able to do average, our average velocity. And then you want something that's called load. Load is what you're actually going to do. So based on your sprint planning, if you then take in so many product backlog items, you sum up, your load could be 21 story points. It could also be, no, we only think we can do 15 this day. It's not, again, set in a stone. Why is it we can't go back and saying one story point is now 8 hours, Malene? Because this is what's called not an absolute number, which means the risk is spread out on so many things. It is not this story took 5 hours. No, it's the size, and the sum is what we can do in a sprint. And the sum spread it out of saying, oh, maybe one were not working. We're not all working 110% every day, right? Like today, I'm actually being very honest, quite tired because I had a rough night with kids last night. I can't give myself 110% today, right? So I might only give me 80%. So we're all different because we're human. But on average, this is what we can deliver as a team with all of those things in there. Where does this then become powerful? Only use velocity to predict. Now we belong to it. Because this is something for itself, this is something for itself. When it become powerful is when we use a burn-up chart to simply understand where are the future going. So I like to make one Excel spreadsheet. I don't like Jira's. I want to be honest with that. Jira's for me become very technical. Jira can be used, but I like to play with the numbers. So what I do normally in an Excel spreadsheet, I take and say, okay, on average, we can do 20. See, now you know why I made 20 to make this easy, hey? That means sprint 8, we are on 160. Yes? Let's give that. That is the prediction. Now, prediction says, it's like a burn down, right? Every sprint, if we did exactly this is how we would do. Now, you would also have one that says, okay, what is actually our full points? And this one can go up and down depending on how the backlog changes. But right now, our full is there, which meaning now simplified, right? For the sake of this right now mean based on what we have in our backlog right now, if we done it all, which is here, we should be done in sprint 8. Now what you can do is what I call actually versus, perfect. Oh, sorry about this. Perfect is that one. Why did I use red for perfect? Bad example. Actually is then every sprint, after every sprint, you can go in here and plot. Oh, we only did 15 after first sprint. That was our actual, right? Now we could go in and plot what did we actually do. Now this for me is what I train a product owner in to understand, because this will become part of, now I'm just drawing a line. Let's just say we're there, right? Then as a product owner, I would go in and saying, where do I predict in the next sprints we will be based on performance, based on these things, we can then start to draw. Now, what does this mean? If you have a sprint of 2 weeks, after every 2 weeks, you can exactly understand, are we on track? Are we below? Are we above the line? Are we we need to change something? Now this become a tool where your product owner can use it to also look at, do we accept change or not? What does that mean? So I'll give you a practical example. As a product owner lead on this project, on the rewriting a manufacturing and warehouse system, we had very much waterfall. Hey, it was the old system, need to develop into .NET. It does not become more waterfall. All functionality over a new system. Now I start to talk with the user, and there was on this one screen, there was a button that nobody could explain me what to do. And we were very in the need of people telling us what to do because the old system was Delphi and we didn't have Delphi coders. So we had sized that button, we had sized a 40 because of uncertainty. Now, as I went around, nobody could tell me what it did. I asked the company saying, do we even have to build it? So I asked the general manager, can we not, like, why do you want us to build it? The sprint before that, we had built the planning page for the factory. And there it was still an old way where they had to select what they had to do instead of deselect. And this factory had grown so big over the years, so they actually had to select nearly everything. It took 2 guys 2 hours a day to do. So I said, there was a one-to-one system we built. I said, instead of building this button, can we go and change? So instead of building the button, we changed the functionality on that you deselect rather than select. And they were like, can you do that? I said, yes, of course we can. Now we had built this system before. It was basically just this page. It was basically just a little. What did it do to this? Was we could take a 40 out and put a 2 in to the backlog. So when we say about this change, responding to change, it's actually about let's have the data so we can see what it would impact. And with data like this, we can immediately see how would it impact or not. So we're not down on the lower level, what will a task take? Because that's absolute, it will always be wrong. We see it more as a bigger picture. And as we do that, it becomes very, very accurate. I'm going to pause there for a second because I can see that somebody want to get into the room. So while I'm busy finding a different room, I'm going to open up and see if there's any questions. We're not done yet though, but I'm getting hunted out of this room. Any question or comment? I did not have a chat, so Ben, I don't know if there was anything that came out in the chat.
There's a lot of good conversation happening in the chat. Like, which one do I answer first? So I'll play around with that while you're doing. So I was busy typing to the last question that I was reading from Zane. The slippery slope about estimation, right? Absolutely. Teams will always compare when that's the only metric coming out of the team. Always. Because if you think about traditional organizations, what are they going to be focused on? I want to make sure that for the money I'm spending, I'm getting productivity back, right? And yes, it's industrial thinking, but that's the reality we live in. So you need to give them an alternative number. So I can tell you that over the last 20 years, I have never come into a team that is estimating the value they're delivering at the same level that they're estimating the effort and the work. Right. So this is usually the first thing that, I try to do that gives me like, hey, look, we have an added value because we're going to estimate value. So generally, it's a conversation with the business side of things, so product owners or product
Guys,
managers.
I need 10 minutes. Can I just quickly sit here, finance a meeting? Will that be okay?
Oh, yes, you're fine, Malena. I assume you're talking to the people there. Yeah, so that's the thing is that if that's the metric that exists, is that like it is what it is. You have to give them something else because at the end of the day, the organization still wants to know, well, then if this doesn't determine good delivery for a team or good productivity, what does? So that's where that idea of, having some form of a value metric or an outcomes metric makes more sense because then we can look at that from a velocity perspective because that you shouldn't be able to game because the business should be giving that as input, right? If you solve this problem for us, it's worth X or Y. And that's the velocity that we should be looking at as opposed to just delivery. So I think Deming has that saying, which is what you measure or gets was that what you measure get.
Managed.
Thank you, Sekotra, namesake. Cool.
Bevan, I think what's also interesting to mention there is the whole about often we in environment where they don't change. So I see that whole they want a project plan, they want all of these things, right? Where Agile and Scrum is about allowing the team to say what they can and how can they do that without this data. And that's what I'm saying. The way I have handled that thing about people want the time and all that, I've actually often contracting, give me 2 months. Let's just first 2 months and then I'll give you perfectly. That doesn't mean, yes, we can still have an idea. So what we had in the example I gave, we had a 2-year project. 2 year was deadline. So instead of saying, no, but we need longer, the conversation, what are we then not going to do? Because in there, right, I rewrote it on an old system. Like there's a lot of functionality they would never use. But if we've gone waterfall, it would just have been, no, you have to do all functionality. There's a lot of functionality that's not needed. So if you give me the time, then I'll tell you what we can do. And that's exactly where this also come in, because we can see the benefit of, well, if we do this instead of that, what does that impact have? And is it worth the value? So I more see this as one technique into the product owner to get data to make those decisions of what functionality are we actually building and what impact would it have. I don't know if there was any direct other question, Bevan, coming in the chat.
There's quite a few good ones. Again, it's just all the same problems that exist with estimation, right? Like just what people have as like, I want to know when I'm getting my stuff. But you're only allowed to use these kind of tools and techniques, which limits what answers we can give. So I think we've got some good
Well,
ones. There's
there
a whole
maybe.
conversation on contracting.
Oh,
Um,
okay, that's for another day. Uh,
yeah.
I think maybe also that thing, when do I get what? This is where you have it here, right? Because when you have a size, even there when we resize the 40, we can go in directly in here and see backlog. Okay, we need to do 68 before we get it. Okay, 68 here, that means in sprint. And sprint you can convert to dates, right? But we never get that it is this day. No, it's in this sprint. The variables again is important because it's a plus minus game. And I find so when you do this change with company, the question is often for me, like everybody's stuck in the old way. They are used to the time, right? They want that to hold on. But when I then ask them and dig a bit in and ask them, for example, when have your time and Gantt chart ever been right? They're like,
Hmm.
no, okay. So what I've seen with the change management often when I start this and show them, I can show you like after next sprint, I can show you exactly where and where it's based on data, not opinions. Then they start to like, okay, this is powerful. Oh, you said that, you also did that. Now you start to create trust and they actually start believing in this.
Hmm. Yeah, Malena, I actually just wanted to add, um, a lot of people like, especially in the Agile community will be like, oh, but it's the old project management thing. If you do a project management certification as part of it, they will be explicit that says estimation needs to be a range. So, like any kind of guess that you give needs to be a high confidence, low confidence. So, if you've got an organization that's saying, no, but tell me an exact date, you can say, well, um, if we had to give it on a specific date, the probability of that being true is 3%, right? And that's another thing that you can kind of pick up quite nicely from a burn-up chart as well, is to say, if you're wanting us to deliver all this work based on current, sizing, um, there's zero chance of that happening because we would have to deliver 3 times faster than what we've done in history, and we've never done it, but you want us to do it now for the rest of the time period. So that's why like it's good to have those playoff conversations. It also means that when people add new things, we can show them how it impacts the timeline. Saying, you added this requirement, does it push this thing out, or does this thing have to wait until after that timeline? So it creates such great conversation.
Maybe also to add on, Bevan, if you find yourself that your actual is here, then you need to adjust this one, right? Because then it's like, no, then we need to adjust and redo our plan because then you're just overcommitting. If you always find you above, also adjust. So I always say it's like I would like to go up and down. So naturally, what I've seen is you go lie. I'd always try to lie as closely as possible to the red line. Sometimes a little below, sometimes up. And why are we below? Well, if you're in South Africa, you know in December we don't really work. So of course there you will below. Then you maybe pick up again, right? It's because it actually also takes in holidays and stuff because it's your average. As you saw over here, the last two sprints we did 23, 22. That's probably more what we can do a sprint. But I keep our velocity for 20 because then it means it's capture for holidays and those things. Always be less than what you can actually do. Why did I would actually maybe even have said 19. Up here, right? Of course, these numbers not that. The more you do, the more relevant they get, and the more you update this one. Now, I know we have 10 minutes left. I just want to share up here also where all of this also come from, because now I know, I think Bevan in chat mentioned outcome-driven contracting instead of outcome instead of output. The other big thing that people are, if you Google around about agile estimation, there's a lot about this beyond estimation, or hashtag no estimation was a lot around. And I laugh a little bit because when you look into the no estimation, that's actually not true. They still estimate. They don't estimate, but they size. But what they do instead is actually taken from relative estimation. So instead of saying, is it bigger or, they just make sure if they have made saying their baseline is 3, they make sure all the product backlog items is 3. So that's a very, very mature team that knows how to split down their stories. So instead of saying we need to compare, they actually just take relative sizing to the next level and say, no, we just want our whole backlog to be a 3. Then they basically only all 1, which means there's no estimation. But I always think that no estimation is a bit of a bullshit, because no, you're just actually taking this mindset of saying everything has the same size, and therefore we can predict. There is a lot of information. I have mentioned a lot of the anti-patterns also along the way. I can't actually remember if I have some more here. I think the very big one is don't compare velocity between teams. Velocity means nothing. Velocity is just a number for your team to be able to predict. That's the only thing it should be used for. It is to give a guidance on what much can we do. I see that whole thing when company says, oh, they are doing 128, you only do 30. Which team is best? Well, I go to my team and say, well, was now a 3, is now a 5, or it was for a 5, is a 8, and suddenly our velocity is also 120. Are we doing more? No shit, Sherlock. Our baseline is just different. They don't mean anything. It shouldn't be a number that should be shared out. Doesn't matter to executive how much the team can do. They should matter about this. Are we on track or not? That should be the conversation. But again, if companies are focused on output, that's where they're down on task level, rather than outcome. And then we have the bigger problem of, are they actually changing? Story points cannot be converted into time. It's not an absolute number. So this whole thing, it should be taking this. No, you can't say that, because it takes so many aspects into it. Spending hours debating estimation, please stop doing that. Doesn't matter. Just give it a number and move on. I never use more than half an hour on sizing. Just quickly give us some numbers. It's wrong anyway. It's just numbers. And do not go down on task level. It's a waste. Is there any comments or questions? I love that one, yeah, Bevan, where the stories are made up and the points don't matter. It's spot on. When you do this right, what I also want to, if you go back now and want to try practice this with your team, be aware that our brain is so focused on time. So what I've most find myself in these conversations, when we say, like, is it bigger or smaller? And then somebody says, it will take me 2 hours. I will immediately say, I didn't ask how long it will take you. I'm asking, is it bigger or smaller? So you actually have to be the gatekeeper of changing that behavior, because the brain will be, how long does it take? That's not the conversation. I just want to know, is it bigger? And that's what I've seen. That's actually where the work is lying, is to convince them they're saying, like, drag us back. It's not about time. Is it bigger or smaller? That's the only conversation we want. Any other comments, Bevan, that you saw in the chat worth checking out?
No, I want to put that to the group if there's anyone you want to chat about a bit more.
I love your comment there. Oh, go for it. Go for it.
No, I was going to say, I think that's one of the biggest anti-patterns that I see with working with teams is that they always bring it back to time. So they're like, oh, well, yeah, this is just going to take me one day. So it's like a one, or, like it's so hardwired into them. They don't really think about the different components and they lose that relative sizing ability. So yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest anti, yeah, that I
So good.
see.
I love that comment because that's also another answer pattern. This is how I do it. I often see people, right? Oh, we now have a 1 year into a project. So it's now a 3, should be a 2 because we've done it before. But for me, that's actually not right. Because if you lower down, if something was a 3, it's always a 3 because it's the same size, because it's not time. Because if you start to lower it down, your velocity will always stay the same. And therefore, you can't show you become better. If a scooter is a 3, it's always a 3, even though you built it before. Like, I like Lego, right? You all know the first time you build a Lego set, it's difficult. Next time it's a bit easier. It's still the same size. It's still the same amount of pieces. It's still the amount of complexity. I just become more better. Why we also do this is because by always keeping the same number doesn't mean what then somebody else that might not have done before can also pick it up. And that's again, that's split out on many risk. That is not, no, it has to be this senior that's done it before because it's a time thing. So if you have sized something, a scooter, a 3, a scooter will always be a 3, no matter how much experience you get. I saw the comment also, I've seen a lot of anti-patterns. I know now we're recording, so now it's going to be recorded. But I know back in the day, SAFe used to train it very much as poker planning. And that's also where a lot of poker planning, relative sizing. That's why I've been very strict on today saying it's 2 different things. Because they very much trained back in the days, find your 0 and then how big is it? And it really creates a lot of anti-patterns. Even in SAFe, I know the SAFe training I did, I'm not blaming any trainers, but there was a calculation saying, okay, 1 story point is then 8 hours. And it's
Per,
always
per
been so
person.
upset with it per person. And
Per
that always
person.
made me
So,
so upset because I was like,
yeah.
now you put time into it. It cannot
Mm,
be like that. But I do understand. And that's where SAFe did not train relative sizing. They trained poker planning. And if we
mm,
go back there, right, remember what I said in the start, a lot of people do not change the behavior with poker planning because they just treat it as a time estimation.
mm. Yeah. And it is incredibly, like I put the comment, it's incredibly difficult to unlearn that with teams. So a lot of the larger enterprises, th that's why we see it so often here as well. So it's easier to change it in a small organization, less ingrained, but in large organizations, even from a management layer, from a contracting layer, I want to track cost per feature per developer kind of thinking. It's a lot more difficult to change because that's kind of what SAFe did was it made that change so that it made it easier to be blunt, sell to managers at a higher level because they could get certainty, but it was false certainty. It always will be as long as there's guesswork involved. So, if we want to create agility that allows us to actually adapt and create good accountability and all those lovely things that were promised, we kind of have to have that hard conversation that says, this is what we're going to do, and it's relative. We actually don't know, but we're going to give you a range, and you're going to come with us on this journey. Every sprint, you can attend our sprint review, and we'll show you an updated burn-up chart that's going to show you how things are evolving, and you're actually going to get to make changes earlier rather than waiting until, 3 months down the project. So,
We are in the end of our session for today. I did our big, what's called our end of the day slide here. I do want to make a highlight saying for those of you that are based in South Africa, especially Cape Town, well, you can always travel in the end of September, we are having the only TBR training this year in a wine farm out in Durbanville. So go ahead and sign up. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think actually a couple of us that's on here today have done that training before. Also, I asked for you before we finish today. I know we get a lot of feedback that this is relevant for you. So I want to ask you what topic would in the chat. put in what topic next do you want us to take up on these conversations? What do we need to take apart, or do we need to bring back Ask Your Expert? Let me know what your need is for next time.